Well, happy Wednesday. Here we are. And let's get some of that blinding sunlight out of there. Or maybe more blinding sunlight. Yes. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to try and talk as loud as I can without being obnoxious to my neighbors, but it is early. So maybe I'll just say close. This is all my face right here in all of its sweaty glory. I came to a realization yesterday that I have changed definitions over the course of, well, about 4 decades, I guess. I used to consider myself a runner, but that is not who I am anymore. I do not actually enjoy running, and I finally embraced it. Desiree and I have started working out in our garage, obviously, and we're having a lot of fun with that. But boy, I just don't love running the way that I used to. But I remember that at one point in time, when I had stopped running for a while, and it was about 6 months before starting back up again, I saw someone running down the road, and he was heavier, and I was not in a healthy personal place at that time, and so the volume of judgmental thoughts running through my head were profound and profoundly toxic. And I was just, judging the heck out of this poor guy. 6 months later, when I decided it was time to start running because I wanted to be a little bit more in shape, saw the same guy, about the same build, about the same frame, and good morning. Say good morning.
Hello.
Tell the people you went pee-pee on the potty.
I want to pee-pee buddy.
You are very good, and you get Skittles when you do that, don't you?
Hi, Seals.
Yeah, you get the candy.
Hi, Connie.
Yeah, the candy. Yes. Uh-huh.
Hey, Connie.
Yeah. Can we talk about running now?
Hi, Bob.
Yeah, he doesn't like running either. He likes a trampoline. Yep. That's my shake. It's mine. You can't have it.
Daddy.
Go ask mommy.
Mommy.
Eventually that stops working. So, in any case, I saw the same guy 6 months later, and he hadn't changed much, but he was still running. And my perspective on him changed because I felt like I was dying. And I had run for about a half mile, and I'm pretty sure that dude's course was about a 10-mile course. I mean, he may not have looked like he was in shape, but that dude was fit. And my perspective changed. My perspective changed as soon as I entered into his reality. There's a guy who wrote a book for one of the classes I took when I was studying worship studies. His name is Stephen Miller. And unfortunately for him, there's a very famous Stephen Miller who advises the president, and the guy is just an awful human being. And not an awful human being. He just says awful things and is awful to people's dignity and doesn't ever say anything kind or nice or positive or constructive. So, awful. And but this other guy, Stephen Miller, is a worship pastor, and he wrote a book called "Worship Leaders, We Are Not Rock Stars." And it was, it's calling worship leaders to task to stop trying to be rock stars and start trying to be pastors and to lead people in worship. And I didn't get this out of his book. I actually got this out of one of his lectures before I was even studying worship. I went to a conference where he and his wife were speaking. His wife was the primary speaker because she's an author. And she was there to speak about how to write, how to get published, how to write books, things like that. And he was there too because he had also published a book, and because, between the two of them, they actually compelled a pretty good crowd. But they described something where they had an agreement between themselves, both of them as creatives. I love that word, creatives. It's like I started hearing it 6 years ago when a friend of mine who was an aspiring photographer, who is now a pretty accomplished photographer and videographer and lots of other ographers when it comes to taking images of things and selling stuff with them or expressing stories with them, all the stuff you do when you're that kind of guy. He used the word creatives, and he used it to describe people who pour passion into creating things. I thought, That's just beautiful, wonderful description of things. But both Stephen Miller and his wife were both creatives, and she wrote and he wrote worship music. He led worship music. He has an album out there that's just absolutely fantastic when it comes to worship music. But in any case, Stephen Miller and his wife had an agreement that when they were going to talk about someone's created work, they were either going to speak only the positives about it or nothing at all. And speaking nothing about a created work spoke volumes in itself, but they decided that what they were going to do was not bash other people's work, but they were just going to lift up what was good about it. And the reason for it was that it helped them within their minds clear out the negative talk in their minds when they were doing their creative work, because you're always going to be your own worst critic. And you always hear your own voice telling you about how bad this is, how bad that is. You can be awful and terrible to yourself if you let yourself. And so they agreed to stifle that voice by not feeding by not feeding other people's work to that voice. And so, starve that inner wolf, as it were. Sorry about the shaking the bomb. So where I'm going with this is this goes along really well with Philippians 4:8 when Paul is admonishing people to fill their minds with good things, good thinking, focus, meditate on these things, pure, right, just, good repute, good reputation, stuff that you can lift up and say, this is good. And that's where we need to be going right now. And I actually want to challenge you to do something creative. There's no such thing as people who aren't creative. There's sometimes when you have to explain that your creativity happens in Microsoft Excel, but everybody can do something creative. Everybody can try, and I mean try hard. And when you get done, if you're doing it because you have been created to be able to do that thing a little bit, you honor the one who created that thing into you. There's no such thing as people who aren't creatives, except that some of us just don't pour any passion into it anymore because we are too busy pouring our passion into breaking down other people's work, breaking down other people's thoughts, other people's actions, other people's passions. Some of us are too busy trying to impress ourselves with how much we can be discerning. And really what discerning means is judgmental jerks who are the people who are not blessed, according to Psalm number 1. Because if you look at Psalm 1, happy or blessed is the man who does not walk in the path of sinners, stand in the counsel of the wicked, or sit in the seat of scoffers. And that third category, sitting in the seat of scoffers, is one of those things that will just rob you of your own happiness, as well as the people who are receiving that criticism. So I want to encourage you to do something creative today. And if that's a creative expression of love to a loved one, if that's picking up some paint and just saying, well, here goes nothing. If that means actually going out and trying to get a perfect picture of a blade of grass, do something. I am discovering that people are not going out of their minds because they're afraid. For the most part, I find people are going out of their minds because they're bored. But their boredom is spurred on by the fact that they don't know what to do. We don't know what to do to fill our time right now. And so we come up with little substitutes, but let's try to be more. Let's try to be bigger. Let's be creatives together. And let's lift each other up.